Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is my podcast, The Filmmaker's Life, and we talk to filmmakers who are moving forward with their careers and learn from them how they built their careers. And the one thing that I've learned from doing this podcast for the last however many years it is, because I started right when COVID hit, is that no two filmmakers have the same path to building a career in the film industry. So, but we're here to learn whatever we can from filmmakers. You may see I have a new background. These are some of my clients' films that we work together on fundraising and distribution. And so Emily made me this lovely background so I can show off some of the projects. Okay. Today, I am really excited to introduce you to a filmmaker who I have met just a few months ago. And we'll get to the story, but it turned out I had actually already seen a film of his. So it was like... it was like meeting a famous person for me. Wally Fall is here joining us from Martinique. Are you in Martinique today, or where are you?
No, I'm based in Guadeloupe. That's where I am.
You're
right
based
now.
in Guadeloupe. That's right.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
yes,
from
yes.
Martinique, but I'm based in Guadeloupe.
Right, right. So I always start out by asking this question, which is, when did you first know that you were a filmmaker?
Wow. We're getting straight into it.
Well, I'll tell you then, while you think about it, I'll tell you, I think when I look back, when I first knew, which is when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I would have dreams where it was a movie about cowboys and Indians, and I was always an Indian, and we always won. And at the end of the movie, it said, "The end," in big letters. The end of the dream, the end of the dream. It said, okay. The end in big movies, in big letters. So when I look back on it, I think, maybe that was when I knew I was going to be a filmmaker. I didn't actually do anything about it for a long time, but yes. Yeah. So how about you?
Okay, I have a story here. When I was in high school, a friend of mine wanted to see Bodyguard with Whitney Houston. He wanted to see it so badly. And I pretended I had the videotape of the film. Pretended I had got it from someone who traveled from the US. I invented a story. I made up a story. And somebody from my family had lent us a video camera that I used to play with sometimes. And I decided I would make a joke to him. So I don't remember. I made my brother shoot me saying something, introducing the film, and then I filmed some ants running around on my terrace, and then I ended it saying, "You've been scammed" or something like that. But I gave him the videotape, and I was so happy about what I just did. And obviously, at that time, nobody would expect to have someone giving you a videotape that he shot, he recorded something to just make a joke. And I was really proud of it. I don't know where it ended up being after that, but that's not really, it doesn't matter. But it's only when I look at it retrospectively now that I think that I had something with that, back then I didn't think it was just a game, I just play a trick on him and that was it. But when I grew a bit older and I was thinking about what I really wanted to do with my life, I think that story popped up at some point in the back of my head. and made me think, let's give it a try, you know, something like that.
That's great. Do you remember how old you were when you did the prank to
I
videotape?
was 14 or 15.
Uh-huh,
Yeah.
Yes,
14 or
that's really
15.
nice. Really nice
That
story.
was
Thank you. And so when did you
thank you.
actually take action to start making films?
It came gradually because when I left high school and I went to uni in France, and I started studying mathematics and computer science.
What?
And yeah. And
That's about as far away from storytelling as you can get, I guess.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, but I think it was a mix of when you get hooked into, okay, what do you want to become when you grow older, and you have this idea. I wanted to be a pilot for some time, and
Ah,
so you have to be to still
yes,
study science and mathematics and
yes,
stuff.
yes.
And it's only after a few years in uni that I realized, okay, this is not going to work, because I started asking myself so many questions about, is it really what you want to do? Is it really where I want to go? This kind of stuff. And slowly but surely it faded out, so, I was sure that it wasn't going to be where I was going to go, I was in France, and I decided to go to London. I was supposed to stay there for 6 months. A friend of mine a childhood friend of mine was going there. He said, let's go to London and spend some time there, um, work a little for a few months, and then we'll see what happens. I ended up staying there for 7 years,
Ah.
but it's there that
Wally,
I
before
start.
you move on, I just have to ask. So,
Yeah.
how does the conversation go with your parents when you say, well, I'm in France and I'm leaving university? Or did you actually graduate with math? Or did you leave before you finished?
Ah,
Because I can imagine
yeah.
your parents were like, okay, good, we're good. He's studying math, he's studying computer science. We're good. So I can't
Yeah.
imagine how
It's
courageous you were to let that go.
okay. So I have two. There is a good cop and a bad cop at home.
Mm.
So I would say the 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 bad cop was my mom. Or, I mean, depending on how you see it, actually, she could be one or the other. But my mom was really into, okay, you need to finish, you need to graduate. Even if you don't want to carry on after that, it's better for you and for your future and this kind of stuff. My dad was an artist. He was a musician. So
Oh, okay.
so he was okay with me choosing to do whatever I wanted to do, as long as I really stood by it. If you want to do it,
Mm.
that's fine, but you need to take your responsibility. It's not going to be easy, but if you choose whatever you choose, then go for it, for real. Don't
And
pretend.
did you already know it was film at that point?
No,
No.
I knew I had an interest in
Uh-huh.
film,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I wasn't sure first. I mean, I wasn't sure, one, that I could make a living out of it. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't sure it was for me. I didn't feel
Mm-hmm.
legitimate to go
Mm-hmm.
there,
Mm-hmm.
because even though my dad was really a cinema goer and lover, and he's the one who actually introduced us to world cinema,
Mm.
um, he wasn't into filmmaking. He was an artist. He was a professional musician for some time, and that's how close he was to being an independent and choosing your own path, really.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
That's what he had to offer, in a way, to
Right.
me and to my knowledge. But we didn't know anyone in the film industry. We didn't have
Right.
anybody at home in the family within the film industry. my dad had friends, you know, in Senegal, because my dad is from Senegal, so he had Senegalese. There is a Senegalese director that he really knew well.
Huh.
Really friends with him, so we had at some time when I was young.
What was his name? My
Wi-Fi
went out for a second. What was the Senegalese director's name? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, of course. It's Mansour Sourawad.
Oh, okay, yes.
And he came in 1990 in Martinique when they did the first edition of Image Caraïbe, you know, the one festival they June Giovanni came, Menelik Shabazz came, a lot of people from the Anglophone Caribbean came over there at that time. And Mansour traveled and he stayed with us when he came for that festival.
Wow.
So I was like 11 or 12 when that happened.
Ah, so interesting how these seeds get planted, right?
Something like that. I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
So when I decided to stop, to drop out of university, my mom was really, she was inconsolable. She was like, what? It was a catastrophe. What are you doing? Why? Please carry on, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, but I know this is not going to be for me. So I think I really gave it a try. And it's not that it was too hard. It's that I was really asking myself too many questions. Why? Why would I know that formula by heart? What for? There was no application to it in my real world.
Interesting.
You know? So I was like, okay, I can't. If I have to go this way to be a pilot, then I won't be a pilot. That's for sure. It wasn't, and my family wasn't rich enough to just pay me flying lessons, you know?
Right.
So it was something, you know, life brought me there. And then when I was in London, I really started really deeply wondering, okay, what is it I want to do? What is it I want to try? And I started taking some classes in video production, evening classes, because I was working during the day.
Do you remember where you took those classes? Where did you take those classes?
It was the first ones were in Islington College.
Okay.
So Holloway Road,
all the way
North London.
Yes.
North London.
I'm a South Londoner, so
okay.
South London, and I. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how it started. And the more I got into it, the more I loved it, and the more I wanted to carry on. And I started making videos, you know, editing videos and making some music videos for artists. And that's how I got into it. But I knew it was only a way for me to get to making my own films.
You know, you said something earlier, which I think is so interesting, that when you started to think about film, you thought, you know, but how do I make a living? And it's so interesting to me because, you know, my work is about helping filmmakers make a living as filmmakers. But it's so interesting. It was almost like the first question, because nobody ever thinks about the fact that there are tons and tons of jobs in the film industry.
Exactly.
You know, but the first question, and I think this is true of any art form, the first question is always, well, you know, how do I make a living? Or even more negatively, I can't make a living.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting that when anybody ever looks at anything to do with the arts, it's always like, well, how do I make a living? And I can't make a living. And it's just such a barrier for people, you know. And whereas when you were doing math and computer science, it's like, oh, you know, jobs there. But there are jobs in film, there are jobs in music, there are jobs, you know, they have careers in these things. And it's so difficult for I think artists to get over that initial hurdle of, well, I can't make a living. And that was the case for me as well. So I really identify with that, because I had made a living, and then I stopped making a living and felt that I couldn't do that. I failed, you know, I failed. So therefore, you know, but now I do make my living in film, but it's just really a barrier for people to, a hurdle for people to try to get across.
Yeah, I think so. I think much later I realized that it's really depending on, as well as where you live, what kind of imperatives you have in your everyday life. Because, for example, in Europe, if you take Europe, Belgium is a place where a lot of artists go because rent is really cheap. And because rent is cheap, you don't have the same kind of pressure trying to venture into your art as you would if you live in London, for example, or even in Paris, because you have a rent to pay every month, and it's expensive in those cities. And the more expensive it is, and the more time you're going to spend working in a day job to pay that rent, and then spending less time doing what you really want to be doing, you know?
Oh, gosh, you have articulated so well. Another is such a barrier, you know, even here in Miami, super expensive, you know, for rent. And so to try to balance that, as I don't talk about it so much anymore, but I used to talk about it a lot, that for filmmakers to balance the, you know, paying the rent, paying the bills with making money on their work, finding that time, because it's always a balance about time.
It's a balance, It's, and there are places where it's harder than others, for sure. And I think that's why as well, that in cinema especially, a lot of people who start or who go to film school are people who come from well-off families in general, you know, because you need to have, you know, money to spend and to be able to stay without doing anything, you know. So it's either your family has some, or you manage to save some. But that it's a tricky part, because at the same time, like you were saying, if you keep putting the money before everything else, you don't do anything. You know? You don't do much. You will just, you know, lose so much energy into thinking, okay, how, why? And you don't do anything. You don't do anything. And then before you realize, it's 10 years I've just, you know, gone by.
Yeah, this is great, Wally, because this is what I talk about all the time, that filmmakers have to face these things. And it takes this level of courage, such a level of courage to actually be able to overcome these hurdles and to work all of this out. So when, you know, we shared with our readers a film that you made, when did you actually get to start making your own films?
It's a bit around 10 years ago, after I had worked on, you know, various projects, corporate, music stuff, really a lot of stuff. But I at some stuff that, so I started with a short film that I shot in Paris. I don't know, maybe I cut out, I don't know. Is it okay? You hear me well?
Yeah, because I can hear you well.
Okay. So I started with a short film, a narrative short film I shot in Paris in 2013. It was called Golden Parachute, and it's something we did without a lot of money, really. You know, it was with a bunch of friends. We gathered around the project, we shot it in over a few days. We had some challenges, and then we had to reshoot for a whole day. And then, yeah, I managed to edit the film myself and finish it. And then I did a documentary where I followed my dad in Senegal for the 2012 general elections. He was going there to vote, and I took it as an excuse to go with him and film him, but film the country as well, because I felt I knew it so little. Not as much as I wanted to. And it was an excuse to talk about him, about the country, about myself, growing up in between two cultures. And yeah, that was my first gestures as a filmmaker.
That's great. So you're so international. It's awesome. I think that's true a lot of Caribbean people. I think of myself as very international, but here you are, because you said two cultures, but it's actually even, then you had France, more, and then you had more. England, yeah. And then you so I identify with that a lot. Once you made the documentary about your father and the vote, did it feel as though you wanted to focus on documentary, or is that a decision you've made, or do you like working in both fiction and documentary?
Both are really, I felt both genres are really rewarding experiences for me, and it's just not the same language, or the same vocabulary, I would say, rather. The documentary, I think, I feel that there are stuff I want to say with the documentary, and others that I can only try and say as a fiction, This is the way I see it. So I'm not putting myself as a documentary filmmaker. I happen to make documentaries, but if I am given the chance and the money, I will make fictions. I will make yeah, I love fictions, really.
Yes. So when did you actually make Plowing the Stars?
Plowing the Stars we made it over, it took a year to be made. We started shooting in 2019. And it was a film that came from Agnès Noël. Agnès Noël is the woman, the actress we see in the film. She's an actress. She's a friend of mine. She was in my very first short film. That's how we met. No, that's not how we met, but that's how we got friends. We became friends. And so at the time she was living in Haiti, and I had just moved to Guadeloupe from Paris. So she was coming home for Christmas, and I remember she sent me a message from the plane saying, "Hey, I'm coming home for holidays. Let's do something." I said, "Okay, let's do it." So we met after a few days after she came. We knew we had an idea of doing something without too much planning, with whatever means we had, whatever equipment we found, and do something. That's how it started. We knew what we wanted to talk about. We knew we wanted to talk about us, about the way we feel about ourselves living in the Caribbean, with the colonial relationship we have with France, and all this kind of stuff. But we didn't know what it would be. So it was an experiment from the very beginning. So we didn't write much. We had some ideas. We tried to film. We gathered a small team of friends again, and we started shooting stuff. With her mainly. We knew there would be a voiceover coming at some point, over whatever we would have. and we had some ideas about scenes, so we shot them. Agnes went back to Haiti. She was supposed to send me the text right after she flew back. It took 5 months before she sent me something. So, you know, during that time, the rushes, the images stayed there. I went, you know, I went on with my life doing other stuff, and then she sent the first draft of what she wrote, and it was really powerful. I gave her some feedback. She arranged it a little, and then she recorded it in a studio. And when she recorded it, yeah, it gave me some more ideas to shoot some more stuff. So I shot more stuff about after that, and then I started the editing. It's actually the COVID lockdown that allowed me to finish the editing, because there were nowhere to go. You know, we were stuck at home. So it's actually during the first COVID lockdown that I managed to finish the film, to finish the editing, and it became an experimental film because it wasn't a fiction, it wasn't a documentary. There were archives, there were some narration, there was some performance even, and I loved it. I loved the fact that it was many things at the same time. I think you are mute, Joanne. I don't hear you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for letting us share the film. We shared it with our community.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Because it's so beautifully made. And the classification of it being an experimental film, you know, I started out in experimental film, so I very much understand that world, but I sort of see less and less and less of that kind of work these days. But I really appreciate it, especially when it's done so well and so powerfully as with Plowing the Stars. So thank you for letting us share that, and so that people can sort of see that kind of work. So I got to tell this story because it was so fun. So I was able this year for the first time to go to the Third Horizon Film Festival here in Miami, which focuses on, what would you say it focuses on? I thought of it as a Caribbean film festival, but it's really not.
It is made by Caribbean folks living in the US or living in the Caribbean, but they are focusing mainly on films from Caribbean
mostly, but they also include other people from other countries who live in this kind of between worlds, which I guess is what Third Horizon means. So, and I had not actually been in Miami for the last few years, and so I had never been to the festival before. So I went, the first thing I went to was a party, and I met Wally there, and I said, and he said, "Oh, I'm from Martinique." And I said, "Oh, are you? Do you have a film in the festival? What's it about?" And he started telling me, and I was like, wait a minute. I've seen that film. And Wally was absolutely shocked.
Yeah, I was like, what? No way, no way.
There's no possibility. And I'm like, no, I saw it at the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. I'm half Trinidadian. I try and go to the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival every year. I teach there every year. And, you know, so I had seen it. But anyway, it was just like, it was such a beautiful moment.
Yeah. Because I had forgotten that it screened there because I wasn't there, you know. So when you go, you don't go with your film sometimes. You don't have the sense of meeting people there or anything. So the experience is different. Yeah.
And the reason that you only had to say a sentence or two for me to remember is because the movie is so powerful. So tell us a little bit about how you came to make this particular feature film. Tell everybody what it's about, all of that.
Okay. So the title is Mantjé, tonbé, c'est vivre in Creole. I translated it in English as Dancing the Stumble. As I could get to the original meaning. But I'll explain the meaning later if you want. basically, I wanted to do a film around psychiatry and mental health from a Martinican point of view, because I mean the first encounters I had with that issue is because I had people close to me who went through um, um, psychic trouble and psychic conditions, schizophrenia or bipolar disorders, this kind of stuff. And I was confronted to it like that as a friend, as a family member, and when I was confronted to it, the strongest feeling I had was to be powerless. I felt really, really powerless. I couldn't do anything apart from listening to the person, listening how bad they felt sometimes, listening to their cries, listening to whatever they wanted to share with me. And it was really something that stayed with me for a long time. I mean, up to this day. And the other thing, and you know, life went by, and so I met people who went through the same things, or I heard stuff about it, and at some point I realized that there was another issue that came with it, is the diagnosis issue. The diagnosis for me is a violence process for me, because you go and see a doctor, a psychiatrist, who after not that long is going to tell you, okay, you have this or you have that. The problem with that is that it can change your whole life, can turn your whole life upside down overnight, because the kind of decision they take when you are diagnosed with bipolar disorders or schizophrenia or other things is, first of all, that they can take decisions for you sometimes. They can make decisions for you. They can decide to put you somewhere, just not to harm yourself or others, quote unquote. And so I understand that, but at the same time, it was always, okay, but this is unfair. Okay, I mean, and because how do you know that what you decided for this person is going to work for that other one who is completely different, just based on your book? I forgot, there is a name, there is a book that is filing all the kind of all kind of disorders.
DSMV.
Exactly.
Well,
this
yeah.
DSM. So and then I started working on the project because after I did my documentary, some people got interested in that film, and then a guy who screened my film back home said, "Do you have another project, another documentary project?" And I was like, "I think I would like to work on this, on psychiatry in Martinique." But I said it like that, really. I said it out of, before realizing how deep it was, really, So it took me some time to really dig deep into it and to understand fully what it was about and what I wanted to, and how I wanted to talk about it, because I didn't want to do something saying what mental health is or what mental issues are. I didn't want to describe. I wanted people to feel what it is to go through this, and to understand that sometimes it's not even the disorder that is the biggest obstacle into someone's path for recovery. It's the way they are perceived by people, the gaze that is on them. That's the biggest hurdle they have. The biggest challenge they face is not their condition, really. It's the fact that some people, as soon as they know you have this or that, they change the way they interact with you. And society changed the way it sees you. Our society, at least. Our capitalist society, where you are judged by your worth. What's your
right.
worth, you know?
What is your worth? What's your dollar
what's your
value?
worth for our system, you know? How do you make the system work, you know? So yeah, that's how I got into it slowly. And I realized that, okay, that was a wonderful way to talk about Martinique without talking about the usual stuff, you know? But to talk about, it's really intimate. You're talking about intimacy. When you talk about mental health, it's about what's really intimate, what's really make us lose balance, what connects us, you know? So it was really, really great for me because that's really what I was interested in. Talk about ourselves, but talk about it in an intimate way without being, you know, at the same time too I forgot the word. But yeah, preserving the I wanted to talk about intimacy without opening it wide open at the same time, you know. So that's how I got into that project, and it took me some time to meet the right people. I spent time in psychiatric wards where I met people who were locked up there, you know. I met psychiatrists, I met nurses, psychiatric nurses, all kind of people who I spoke to try and understand the whole thing. But I knew I didn't want to.
One of the most amazing things to me about filmmaking, and particularly documentary filmmaking, is that it allows the filmmaker and thereby the audience to enter into places we would otherwise never have access to. And this film, on the widest level, seemed to me to really do that. It took us into not only an active psychiatric hospital, which is not something that we would normally see, but it was also a psychiatric hospital in Martinique, which I would never really have access to. And so just even that kind of the widest is like, we get to see a world that we would not normally have any access to whatsoever.
And at the same time, I didn't want to be inside the hospital because it was always what came to mind when people think about those spaces. It's you are locked up somewhere,
right?
And you think that it's only whatever happens there stays there. It doesn't. You don't have any kind of relationship to it. Whereas I truly think that mental health is for everybody. Has to think about their own mental health. You know, you shouldn't start wondering about it when you have a problem, you know, when you have a disorder,
right?
You have to constantly ask yourself, am I at the right place? Am I feeling too much pressure? Am I being bullied? Am I, you know, all this kind of stuff, you know, we have to make some self checkups, I think very regularly. Otherwise we can lose touch with ourselves. You know? You know?
And how did you come across the story of the practitioner who comes in? That to me was an extraordinary part of the story, but I want to let you talk about it.
Okay. Cinemawon is a young woman that she's an artist. She's a drummer. She grew up in a family that is really rooted into that tradition of ballet. Ballet is our traditional music and culture. So there is
it the equivalent of Obia, Santeria, Voodoo? Is it the equivalent? I wasn't sure about that.
You can, I mean, Voodoo and Obia and Santeria are spiritual path.
This is purely
those ones are spiritual in themselves.
Yes.
Inside Bel Air, there is a spiritual part of it. But it's not only that.
I see.
So, for example, in Bel Air culture, there is the music. There is the music and the songs you do when you farm the land, when you work together, you harvest the land. So there are specific songs and music for that. In the Bel Air culture, you have that how do you say that? In French, they call it le troc. So it's I give you this and you give me that in exchange.
Oh, it's call and response.
Okay.
Call and response.
So for example, if I'm a farmer and I have sweet potatoes, I give you some sweet potatoes and you are
barter. That's called bartering. Sorry, barter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's part. I mean, they recreated it too, within the context of Martinique. You know, during slavery and after, but it's really broad. You know, it's not only the music. When you come to music and songs, obviously there is a part of it that is spiritual. It had to hide itself behind a lot of stuff because the land owners and the slave masters and people who were in command would stamp on anything that looked to challenge the church, you know, as remotely as possible. You know, they would really I forgot the word in English, but they would really go after that, you know.
Repress
it, anything that appeared to challenge the church authority, they would suppress it without thinking about it. So because our islands are smaller than bigger islands like Trinidad, Jamaica, and Cuba and Haiti, a lot of I mean, all the spiritual aspect of our cultures got hidden below or behind a lot of stuff because it was hard to express it openly. So, for example, in a Bel Air night, it's only after 4 a.m. in the early morning at the end when most of the people are gone that you have the spiritual parts of that night, you know, after the dances, after the entertainment, after the joy and everything, there is a part that is really there to allow you to let off the pressure, to reconnect with your people and everything. But it comes really at the end. And it's only for people who have been initiated, you know, introduced. It's not anyone can get into those parts.
Right.
But I was made aware of this part of a Bel Air night very recently by Cinemawon. And I was like, how come I never heard of it?
Wow.
You know, she said, you never heard of it because people don't talk about it openly. And I even though I knew Bel Air, I didn't grow up in a Bel Air family. And I've never been into it that much, you know. I know about it, but I haven't practiced it, you know. So Cinemawon, I knew her from friends because we organized screenings of short films in Martinique, and that's how we met. But it's only again during COVID, where you had so much time to do whatever you wanted, that I bumped into her. I saw a video of her sustaining a memoir for a degree she had, because she did an experiment like that with kids, kids with PTSD. Is it
PTSD? Yes.
PTSD. So she did that with kids between 3 and 6 who had PTSD, and I rung her up right away saying, would you like to do that in a psychiatric environment?
You were the one who facilitated that?
Yeah.
Oh, so I feel as though we're talking about a film that nobody knows what we're talking about, but
no. I told her, and would you
Yes.
like to do that? You know, it's like, she said, yes, because I tried and
Wow.
I couldn't find the right people and everything. I said,
Right.
don't. And I said, okay, hold on. I'm going to introduce you to someone, because I already knew Mehdi Zazwa, who is the psychiatrist, because my brother was a psychiatric nurse and he worked with Mehdi. So that's how I met Mehdi.
Right.
A couple of years before. And when I introduced Simile to Mehdi, it clicked on really well, you know, and they said, yeah, let's try something, you know. And when they met, I knew I had something. And that's when I got back to the production company, the production guy said, the producer, I told him, I think I have something. So we had to get ready for the shoot really in 6 months. And that's how we got into making the film.
Wow. So it's so interesting. I don't know if you even are aware of this, but when you first started talking about the film today, you used the word psychic. And in English, we don't
it's not
use
the same thing. Yeah,
psychic when it comes to psychiatric. But what happens in your film when the patients are introduced to the drumming and the music and the dancing, ballet, I feel as though there's a psychic change that happens with them. But we don't usually use that word psychic when it comes to mental health, you know, Western models, psychiatric, and so on. But it is clear that they experience a spiritual and psychic change. And that's what we witness in the film. It is absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah, anything that happened after that was just pure joy and blessings, I would say, because I think I just made the experiment. It just happened once, actually, because just for the film, because right after that, the team didn't stay together. The team from the daycare hospital didn't stay together. So they were supposed to carry on after that, but they were not able to do that. So I knew that we happened to just be there at the right time, you know.
What would you say is the impact for the patients of having that experience of Belém? What is the impact on them, and from your perspective?
I think that it allowed a lot of them to open up, you know, in a very short time, because we didn't shoot over a month, you know. And at the end of the month, you know, there is a young woman we see singing in the river at the end. She wouldn't even open her mouth to speak when I met her, you know. She would tell someone to say whatever she wanted to say, and that person would tell me. At the end, she was the one calling me. She has my number, I have a number, and she would just, how would you be singing in a river knowing you are being filmed? Or probably, I don't even know if she knew, but she was into it, you know. She was into it. She was singing, and it was so beautiful that I knew we had to capture that, because I knew something really, really powerful was happening when she sang at the river, you know, because it was total improvisation.
Amazing, you know? the way that people started to move. And I've had a couple of experiences in my life with this kind of work. And I'll tell one. So I used to every year get to study African dance with a teacher called Reginald Yates. I think he's passed away now, but I haven't been able to find him. But he used to come to Florida every year for the Florida Dance Festival that I worked on. And he also taught at, you know, top dance companies. Anyway, he used to teach a lot of African sayings. And the one that made the most impression on me was, he said, if you beat a child, its soul will leave the village and hide behind the mountain. If you beat a child long enough, its soul will leave the village and hide behind the mountain and never come back. And what I saw in your film was people whose souls had left the village and were hidden behind the mountain and were never coming back. Were never coming back. And in a very short time, as you explain, you know, through the use of, it's partly music, drumming, but it's also to do with their roots, you know, their historic roots that they've been disconnected from, cut off from. And to have them, to witness their souls coming back. That's what we see in the film.
I agree. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, definitely, because it was so. And at the same time, I decided to keep a character that I found strong, that didn't really get into the experiment. He didn't like the German. He didn't like what Simeline was talking about when she talked about ancestors and everything. He had converted to Islam a few years before, and I think he's the one that had the clearer who made the clearest decision of choosing a spiritual path. And that's probably why at some point he was under the impression that they were trying to force something upon him, you know? And we're like, no, we're not forcing anything on you. There's nothing preventing you from being a Muslim and thinking you have ancestors that are around you. Why would that be, you know? But anyway, if you don't want to, it's okay, it's fine, you know? But at the same time, it's the one that had the best ability to talk about his condition. You know, he was the most intelligible one when it comes to talking about, okay, the way people see him, the way he feels, what he thinks about that society, labeling him as insane. You say, what is sane? What is sane and insane? If an insane society decides that you are insane, what does it make you? You know, this kind of stuff. I found it really interesting at the same time, and it was good, and it was a way for me to say that, okay, we're all different. We are all different, and you don't have to. Okay, if the drums and the music are not for you, then it's not for you, and that's fine. You know, it's okay. You're still a human being, and we still love you. You know, we can still do stuff together anyway. You know, so it was a really great adventure for me, that film. Yeah,
it's fantastic. And when is it actually going to be available for people to see?
I think you can already watch it on. I mean, the French version is accessible, but only from certain territories, because it aired on TV, you know, here in Martinique and Guadeloupe when it was on TV, so it stays in the replay for a whole year after that. But apart from that, I don't know. I think you can access it I have to check, but on the website of the producers, they have a section where you can stream their films. So I'll check that, and if I find the link, I will send it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And what is your next project? What are you going to be doing next?
I'm trying to do a narrative feature, but I'm writing. I don't want to talk about it yet because I feel it's too fragile to talk about it.
Sure, no worries.
But that's really what I want to be doing next.
Yeah. Fantastic. If anybody has any questions, please interrupt me. But I'm going to go ahead and so what I also was asking for the documentary is there a plan for some kind of general distribution, or are you keeping it kind of in the impact campaign kind of world or festival run world?
It's going to be a year that is been in a few festivals. It hasn't toured that much, I think. I mean, it could have toured much more. I don't think it was a documentary that was first produced mainly for TV from the producer's point of view, you know. And I think most of the festivals it was more me who pushed it, you know, which is fine. It's okay. I think now the next step for me is to screen it back home a little bit more, you know, with people, meeting an audience from our background, because it went on TV, but TV is so frustrating. You don't know what people think. You don't get to talk to them. You don't get to hear what their thoughts about it. If they loved it, if they hated it, it's fine. I mean, I can take it all, because I think the feedback is something I really believe in your growing experience, in your, you know, in what you learn about your craft. People don't have to love what you do as long as they can express.
Have you considered having an impact campaign with the film?
No, I did not, because I didn't know really much about it, really. I thought it was going to be, I thought it was going to be done at some point, you know, by the producers and I think when it started going in festival, it was fine. But they're a production company, they're not a distribution company. So
yes,
that's not their part of the job, you know,
right.
At the same time. So
I personally, I think it's an incredibly important film. And I think that it deserves a significant impact campaign. And we can have a conversation about that. But I really do. And I think that, you know, I'm not sure exactly who the audience is, but the audience I would like to see it is the psychiatric nurses and the psychiatrists. Those are the people I think should see it, because I think it's revolutionary. What happens in the film, what we witness, and it's not like anything that I've ever seen, and it was so simple and cheap. If you think about, you know, you're running a psychiatric hospital, it's like, how much is it costing you to hire an artist to come in and, you know, play some great music, you know? It's like, so,
you need to find the right person, but I think it's not expensive. You know, you just need to have time and, you know, pay the people who come and do this. But and one thing that was really important, I think, in the experiment is that everyone was being part of it. It wasn't just for the people who were attending the daycare hospital. It was for the nurses, for the team. Everyone was part of the workshop, you know. Because the idea is, okay, we are all connected.
We're all connected.
Even though you're having this condition or disorder, you are still a human being, and unless we come together, it's only because we come together that what makes us human. You know, that's the connection. My connection to you makes you realize that, okay, you're one of us. I'm part of you, and you're part of me. You know.
Yes.
That thing is really paramount in what we were trying to reenact. You know, in the workshop was an excuse to reconnect people to others, to themselves eventually, but to others.
Yes. That sense of belonging is so primary for a positive mental health. That sense of belonging.
Because even from a Western point of view, you read that mental disorders are something is broken inside of you, but something is broken also between you and others.
Yes.
You know, because you don't interact with people the same way. Sometimes you are just inside your world, and we need to find a way to make you come back to being together. Even if sometimes you choose to be alone, that's not the same thing. You know,
That's exactly right.
You decide that, okay, now I want to be alone for some time, and you are alone and you're fine with being alone. But it's not that sometimes something you don't control just cuts you off from everybody else, you know? It's not the same.
Right. It's great. Let's have a conversation about an impact campaign and see about just thinking it through a little bit. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Okay.
So thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you, Joanne, for having me.
I loved the film so much when I saw it. I was so thrilled that I got to meet you in Miami, and now I got to find out the whole
process
story.
Yeah. Thank you. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, and thank you, Emily, as always.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, thank you.
Taking care of all of the tech.
Yes,
and Wally will, if he can send us the film, he'll send it to us. Yes. And I look forward to staying in touch.
I will. Yeah, no problem. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.